Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We are now beginning this online session where we were going to talk about 24/7 solar energy. Particularly, we're looking at how to hybridize or how hybrid approaches are coming to PV and CSP in the same project or in similar projects so that we can have an actual result of 24-hour with solar energy. Before we begin, I'd like to welcome some of the people who are here. I see a lot of very old veterans, let's say, in the CSP arena, and I'm happy to see you all here. You know, there's Fred, I can see some people from Ayman, some of the people have been working there for a very long time. So please welcome everyone. I don't want to forget anyone, so I'm not going to give any more names, but Juan Ignacio, welcome. Jonathan, Luis Crespo, anyway, a number of people. So it's good that we are all here, and it's good that we're also welcoming other people who are maybe new to the industry. As you can see in the chat, we have people from Chile, people from South Australia, people from Portugal. So this is a very diverse group. We'd love to see that. So we have some people from Paris here as well, Dubai, we have EDF in Chile, interesting. South Africa, South Australia, so definitely, Pavlos also from Cyprus. Definitely we have a situation where there are people who is good evening, some people who is good morning, so that's excellent. Who is here to talk to us today about this specific setup in hybrid plants? Well, two of the people who are working on it right now, so that is great news. I'd like to welcome first Miriam. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, your company? And I understand that you're in Dubai today, Miriam?
Yes, hello everyone. Thank you very much, Belen, for the invitation. Very interesting topic, which is happening today, this year, last year, and the next years also, about hybrid PV and CSP. I am Miriam Bilizin from Aqua Power Business Development Team. I focus more on renewable projects, different technologies. And so I've been with Aqua Power for more than 6 years now. And I've been working on the latest, one of the projects that I have worked on is the latest DY-CSP PV hybrid project of 950 megawatt. So I will try to share my experience in hybrid today with everyone here.
Thank you very much. And indeed, we're looking at the next project in Morocco being a hybrid approach. So this is a gaining interest, and we've already seen a little bit of that going on in Dubai as well, at least in the thinking. So I'm really looking forward to hearing, Miriam. Thank you very much. And Javier, could you also introduce yourself and tell me a little bit about you, your company? And I understand you're based in Sevilla, and you're in Sevilla today.
Yes. Hello, everybody, and welcome, everyone. Thank you, Ata, for invite us to this very interesting webinar. Yes, I'm talking from Sevilla. I'm working for Abengoa now for 9 years, more than 9 years. And I'm been involved in different CSP, always in CSP projects in all the stages, since development to construction and also operation. And now I'm busy with the technology itself, looking for new opportunities and looking for new technologies related to this. So this is a very interesting topic, as Marianne was saying. So yes, as you know, Abengoa is one of the key players on this market since the new era of 21st century. And we're looking for how all the technologies are developing and how the future will be, which is related for sure with storage and batteries, hybridization, and so on.
Thank you very much, Javier. So this is what this is about. First of all, a sort of commonsensical approach at the system level planning so that we can have more renewable energy in the grid throughout the day. And also how the projects themselves are being thought out so that they can provide energy to a certain offsetting profile. So this is what we're going to talk about. Right. So to start, I'd like to ask Miriam to share her screen. And Javier, if you can go on mute while she speaks. And whilst Miriam gets ready, just to remind you, many of you have already been here before, but to remind you, you have a Q&A box. You may use that to send your questions. After Miriam and Javier speak, I'm going to be taking the questions that you've sent and asking them. And we are recording the session, and we do have the presentation materials, which will be sent to you a couple of days after we finish this webinar. So Miriam, could you just make that into the full screen? Perfect. You're
Can
ready
you see it now?
It's perfect, yeah.
Okay. We have seen that the market is used to compare these two most famous, let's say, solar technologies, which is PV and CSP, and then compare between them what is the best, what is the worst, what are the problems in each one, etc. But nowadays, and especially the latest years, we have seen that us as developers, EPCs, clients, off-takers, and also the whole market is acknowledging that these two technologies are not anymore competing between each other, but rather than competing, it is complementing each other right now. So how can we use these two technologies today? And provided that the purpose is to inject into the grid as much energy from renewable resources, then that would be one of the key solutions that the market is proposing. So as of today also, we can see that off-takers and government procurers are promoting also this kind of solution, and considering the PV and CSP hybrid as one of the key solutions to increase the penetration of solar energy in the grid and in the industry. So I have here a few slides that we can go through it. So we have seen a drop in tariffs in all the renewables, especially on the solar, PV, and the CSP. So I am here just taking as a case of Aqua Power project, where let's say in around 3 years, we have managed to decrease 60% the tariffs of PV technology in different projects. Passing from the DIWA Phase 2 project, which is in Dubai, to Sakaka project in Saudi Arabia, there was a difference of 60%. So you can see here how this technology has improved, and this improvement, how it has impacted the industry, where there was a massive change passing from conventional power plants to promoting more renewables at a very competitive tariff. So we can see also in CSP project here, where Aqua Power has passed from Bookport project in 2012 to the DIWA Phase 4 project in 2017-2018, where there was a drop of 64% in around 5 years. So again, it's not only PV that is decreasing the tariff, but also CSP. Of course, both technologies has pros and cons, but if we go through what is the purpose for us, what is the goal of having this technology, is that we want to have cheap electricity available 24 hours and coming from renewable, because we are in a region, for instance, here where everything is depending on either coal or gas, but not 100% of renewables. So if our purpose is to bring more solar energy and renewable to the grid, then we need these two technologies to be complementing each other and to be used at the same time. So true that PV has low cost, it has also low risks, it has availability only during the daytime whenever we have solar resources, and also intermittent and variable. But in the meantime, we can bring here CSP to complement this. So wherever we have this intermittency, we can bring CSP, which is acting as a base load to cover this gaps, let's say, in distribution of energy. We can at the same time use CSP at peak time or whenever it's needed, for instance. As here in the region, there is a lot of need of generating electricity by the end of the day, for instance, because it's one of the peak times. So by end of the day and at night, it is required to have electricity. And we know that PV for now, it's true that it has storage, but it didn't reach the level of storage of CSP, where many hours of peak are required to be generated and injected into the grid from renewables. So here comes CSP to complement this gap that PV doesn't have, and have a sort of dispatch which is similar to conventional as baseload. True that it has high cost, but we have to think also that these tariffs are nowadays competitive to the conventional ones. Now we can see also how we could reach competitive solutions, hybrid and PV projects. So nowadays, CSP is not considered as before. PV also is, there is a lot of evolution in PV. I mean, you can see between last year and this year, there are many new things, many improvements. So we can see that in the last year, CSP has evolved, PV the same way. Now, both of them are very bankable. We had many projects, either hybrid or even if separated CSP and PV at a very large scale, with very advanced technologies, with very competitive prices. And it's where companies now are more comfortable with it and know perfectly what's the execution phase, what are the critical paths, and this kind of things. So the previous experience has served us to get more lessons learned and then get more familiar with these projects. So the more capacities we have in the markets regarding PV and CSP, it helps the market to get to evolve in this technology and then improve it and make some enhancement to make sure that the market is using more renewables, and especially the solar one that is the subject today. So for instance, the DIWA CSP PV hybrid project of 950 megawatts, with having 4 plants, which is usually one project each, having 4 plants in one project by having 1 tower and then 3 parabolic trough, so 600 in total parabolic trough and 100 megawatt tower. You can imagine what this could bring to the technology, all the lessons learned, all the improvements that have to be done on site, or the data that will be collected also in terms of design optimizations, also in execution. What are the challenges? How are we going to solve these issues? So all this will bring a lot of value and a lot of learning to the industry and to this technology. So in the future, there will be more use of this technology, which is our purpose today. So we have seen also that equipment for both PV and CSP are decreasing in price. So as you know, passing from 50 megawatt CSP or PV plant to 950 megawatt, where 700 are CSP and 250 are PV, it generates a lot of savings. And then not only savings, because there is the scale of the projects, the savings in workmen, in works, in manpower, etc., but also attract some other investors. It attracts also some other suppliers who are maybe not, they were not thinking of entering in the industry, but now they are very keen to enter into the industry and then be part of this technology, and then participate in what we are doing now. So we have seen also that there are innovative manufacturing and automation, for instance, of many equipment. We are talking also about in the future artificial intelligence, which will help a lot in the solar business, either in execution or in operation and maintenance, in getting data, etc. But this is maybe starting now, it will come in the future. One of the points that makes it very competitive also is the PPA term. So we have seen that here in Dubai, we're talking about 35 years PPA term from initial acceptance of the project. So that makes the project more competitive. And the competitiveness is coming very simple from having longer tenures and also having more revenues through the time. So the tariffs would be more and more competitive in the future. So talking about having cheap energy electricity from PV during only the day, with covering it by CSP during peak hours and at night also would bring the value. Because let's say for off-takers and for governments, all is about the value of the tariff. If the tariff has a big value, then we could sell the project. And this is the case, what's happening in PV and CSP hybrid, right? So we have 24-hour dispatch, we have a low cost of PV mixed with CSP. That gives a very attractive tariff to the off-takers. We have also competition with the conventional plants, because now the tariffs are so low that it's very competitive compared to coal and gas in a region which is very dependent of this, which is basically using mainly the conventional power. And in addition to that, there is a value also in reducing carbon emission in the region. We know that there are programs in the region which are, for instance, DIWA and Dubai, which has a target of energy generation that has to be reached. So why not promoting during the day, having PV and then CSP covering the intermittencies, and then at night covering the gap by CSP. So I have here listed some key elements to consider in the hybrid projects, because maybe not everywhere you should have, or the hybrid would be the best solution, because maybe the consumption in a location is not requiring to have electricity at night. So the first thing that we go through it here is the load profile and the dispatch of energy. For instance, in the Middle East region, we know that there are many peak times which are at night. So having definitely a hybrid solution by CSP generating by the end of the day, maybe let's say from 4 p.m. for instance, until the night, through all the nights, then it brings value to having hybrid PV and CSP. Storage strategy also is important. So if we are having peaks by the end of the day and at night, then the storage strategy should be designed, and the plant should be also designed in order to cover this need of injecting into the grid whenever it's required, and complying with the load that is required, right? So we have also the climatic conditions. It is important to consider what is the DNI or the GHI that of the location where we are right now, and whether generating electricity from PV makes sense to mix it with CSP. Availability of funds. We have also, it's important to consider that it's important to consider that there are in CSP some specific EPCs that have to be taken in consideration compared to PV, for instance. So the EPCs in having a CSP project have to be robust. We need to have also a technology provider, which is not required for PV, very specific equipment and critical equipment, let's say, compared to PV. So availability of these EPCs, equipment, and also investors is very important to determine whether there is a possibility of having a hybrid project at the time. Financing, which is a big part of having a hybrid project. So financing a small PV project is not a big challenge, but when it comes to a CSP project and then adding to it a PV project, then it's challenging. So there has to be developers who are capable of achieving financing of projects, and off-takers who are supporting the financing, a set of banks, because the number of banks in CSP projects are different than the ones for a PV project. So the financing part is very important, because otherwise there is no project. Very simple. So it's important, I think, to consider all these points before deciding to go through designing and going for a hybrid project of CSP and PV. And my last point, I think, is about the lifetime of PV and CSP plants. So we were talking before about 20-25 years of PV and CSP projects, but we have seen, and our last project in Dubai, the DIWA project, phase 4, considers a 35 years lifetime PPA term, let's say, of this project. So it has been banked, so it's bankable. It's not that we cannot bank a project like that. So we intend to see in the future more and more projects with a longer PPA term. So for instance, here in Dubai, there has been some enhancement in equipment to make sure that the projects are designed in a way to comply with the requirements of the PPA for 35 years. There are suppliers which have been contacted, of course, for the project. They are doing their design based on a longer term, which is 35 years. There are many equipments, for instance, in the power block, which are similar to a coal or a gas power plant. So we don't see any issue on this one, where we have seen, gas fire plants operational for more than 40 years. So we don't see any issue on having a CSP or a PV plant functional and generating revenues operational for 35 years. Of course, there would be some enhancement maybe required. There would be some refurbishment for the plant, but it is definitely making the tariff of the hybrid project more competitive and more attractive to off-takers. In addition to that, we know that in some countries there are some laws which require for some components to be designed for more than 20-25 years. So the issue of having a longer life term, more than 25 years, is not really an issue nowadays, because we have seen this that has been banked, and it has been accepted by off-takers, by banks, and by developers also. And there are currently suppliers and EPCs who are committed to deliver such a plant. Yeah, so I think that was all for me.
Thank you very much, Miriam. A lot of food for thought in there. I think you answered a bunch of the questions that are already coming our way, but we do have a lot of questions, so we'll get there. If you can stop sharing the presentation, and I will ask Javier to share his. Excellent, Javier, if you can get yours ready. And thank you very much. Javier has already been answering some of the questions, but we'll get to some of those. I can see the questions go in a certain direction, so we'll get time to do all of this. If you can put that in just large scale.
Okay.
Okay. Yes, you're ready. Go for it.
Okay. Well, hello everyone again. So Marianne based his presentation in how the market is developing and how which are the main challenges that we have for the CSP developing projects and the renewable developing projects. I will focus a little bit also in the same thing, but I will put also an example of a project that we are building, a hybrid project that we are building in Chile, which is also related to some of the questions that were coming. Okay, main thing now, everyone is talking about all the objectives of the world for renewable energy source and trying to get rid of the carbon and fossil fuel generation plants. But we have a challenge with the renewable, which is the dispatchability. That challenge with wind and PV source is there are some things to do with for the storage, like mechanical storage with aero pumping, which is the typical one that has been used for a really long time, or flywheels, even compressed air. Also the batteries, which is now the latest state of the art, and they are coming to many projects. But we have also the CSP technology with the molten salts system that has been proven that is a very reliable solution and is working quite fine to compensate that lack of power of the renewable energy, and trying to get this source more dispatchable. Okay. About the prices, the PV is the one that is going down faster, as Marianne was showing, but also the CSP is coming down. There is still some room for improvement, and we are seeing that every project, the tariffs are coming still down. So we need to take advantage of the two characteristics of these technologies and trying to put them together. Okay, this is the typical DAC curve, which shows the lack of the problem that are facing in many countries now, many markets, energy markets, related to the renewable energy. During the day, the generation from the PV plants is very high, so the demand of the conventional plants is getting low and low. But then once the sun is gone and the sunset, the demand increases dramatically, and it's very difficult for the conventional power plants to cover that necessity. So we need something to improve the generation in the evenings from renewable energy. So you can see CSP and thermal energy storage will help to resolve this challenge. Okay. The experience of all the technology providers and the market and so on is showing that for more than 3 hours of storage, that is what actually the minimum that the markets need, molten salt has become the more reliable storage system, and is the main solution for this. Okay, now here we are in Abengoa. We have been working with this for 10 years, even though there are other plants working even a bit longer. And we are learning a lot, and we have had some challenges, but everything is going now smooth, and we can trust in these solutions. We are not experiencing degradation, which is was one of the most important things that to check during these years, as was quite unknown what was going to happen with this. See, for example, this is our experience, but also the other technology providers has a lot of experience on this. We have 16 molten salt tanks in operations during this time. No issues on them. More than 10 heat exchanger trains working, more than 30 pumps working, 200,000 tons of molten salts, and also the heat tracing and piping, special piping for this kind of projects. So the experience is there, and is showing that this thing works. Okay, here you can see some of the projections made by the NREL, the American Laboratory for Renewables, where you can see that yes, PV plus batteries is seems to be the cheaper, that it will be the cheaper option in future, but still not there. Still we are not there, and we won't be there soon. So we need to work on the combination of both technologies for this. This is an example of an hybrid plant, how it will work. We will have during the day the generation of the PV plant, while the CSP plant will be charging the energy. That energy will be released during the evening after the PV plant is shut down. And as I was saying in one of my replies, now we are working on some ways to take advantage of the excess of energy generated by the PV plant. You know, for example, you have a project where you can only export, let's say, 300 megawatts, but once you start putting some PV panels, if the space is good enough, you can add more megawatts for that, which the margin price is better. So you can take that excess of energy to the evening. And as you already built the thermal storage system, if we find a way to use that energy, to store that energy in the CSP system, we will take a lot of advantage of that. That's the way of that electrical heater, for example, to take the electrical energy or convert it on thermal, and release it also together with the CSP in the evening, plus the batteries. So that is the combination of the three systems in a CSP and PV hybrid plan. Okay, this will give us an opportunity to get, let's say, 100% of capacity factor. But well, if we have a few days with lack of solar resource, so we can say like 90% of capacity factor depending on the place. Okay, and this is an example of one of the hybrid plants. Now we are building in the state in Chile, the plant Cerro Dominador. There are different kinds of hybrid plants that you can see. You can have a base load plant where during the day you generate mainly with the PV plant and the same load during the night with the CSP plant. But also, as you know, the demand of the market sometimes is that during the evening there is a high peak of demand. So you can do like a higher power with a plant with higher power capacity in the evening, even you shut down the plant at 9, well, in the night when the demand comes down. That is called like a peaker plant. Or some separate the last option, which is the PV from one side and CSP from the other side, which is not very interesting. We are seeing that it's not very interesting. So as I was saying, we are building up a project in Chile, like a solar plant to work as a base load plant. It will work between 110 and 150 megawatts, 24 hours, 24/7, which is one of the objectives of this hybridization. Also, now this plant has a power battery storage system to support the spinning reserve in case that there is any fault in the grid and so on. In this project, is still a bit small, the battery system for 4 megawatts hour. Remember that this project was developed like 4 years ago. Now the tendency and what the market is showing is that this power storage system capacity will increase in the new projects. So some data of this project is that it's a molten salt tower with dry cooling, 100 megawatts of PV, and 100 megawatts of CSP plant as well. And it will work for 24/7 and it's been building by Acciona and Acciona together for Cerro Dominador. Okay. Some pictures of the plant, which is already in construction. The PV panels that you can see there, the PV plant is already in operation. And the storage tanks have been building up. They are almost finished, and now the tower also is finished, and now we are working on the receiver to install the receiver on top. Okay. So thank you very much to everyone, and now we are here for your questions.
Thank you very much, Javier. Can you close the screen so that we can see you? Yeah, much better. So you can see there is a bunch of questions there, and they're all pretty similar. There is a bunch of them that are all the same. So I'm gonna read one of them. I think we'll take about 10 minutes for questions, but do send them through and see, you know, depending on how it goes, we might continue or you know, we'll see how it goes. Okay. So the biggest question that we're getting, and we're getting like repeatedly, is how do you compare integrating PV and CSP in a unit, in the approach of a unit, compared to where you independently generate PV and CSP, complementing each other, but being paid separately as two separate items. So I suppose that's the difference between the approach in Cerro Dominador, where it's one unit, and the approach in Dubai, where, you know, actually DIWA is using PV during the day and CSP during the night, but procuring them separately. So what are the wins? What are the pros and cons? This is what people want to know. So who wants to start?
Okay. From my side, we are talking about very similar technologies, but with different capabilities. So I agree that the market should pay different for different qualities. For example, if you install PV plants, you can full of PV panels, fill up the with PV panels all the deserts and all the world, and we will have energy during the sunlight. Now, but it doesn't have the quality to provide the energy whenever you need it, which is what the CSP is providing. So, yes, from my point of view, there needs to be a difference between the tariffs or so on for the different technologies if they are providing different quality of energy. For example, as we have seen during these years that the renewable energy is getting some kind of benefits in the tariffs because the renewable energy is providing benefits to the world and to the fighting the climate change and all the environmental issues and so on. And that is the way that we have to work. However, all the technology providers, all the constructors, all the developers are working in calming down the prices because at the end this is a market and we need to calm down all the prices. But we need to maintain the perspective that we are getting like a more quality energy with these kind of technologies. I don't know if Marianne wants to add anything.
Mariam?
Yeah, so I think that it is important to consider the tariff because if these technologies, both of them, if renewable are not provided at a low tariff, then it has no future. So it's very important to consider this. So if we are talking about one project that has hybrid PV and CSP, where there is one developer, one EPC, and there will be for sure some savings compared to having one project from one side, which is CSP, and then the other one, which belongs to someone else, which is PV, but then in the grid, there will be the mix of energy. So there will be, the first value is getting a low tariff, right? The second one is also on the operational side. So if we are having one project with PV and CSP, and then there are some gaps to be filled, and then there is a profile for a dispatch from the plant that has to be followed, then the operator will make sure that he's going to comply with this dispatch requirement. So if there is any, let's say during that month there is X of energy to be dispatched to the grid, then it is guaranteed by a developer, by an EPC, and by an operator or so. Then the owner of the plant is going to make sure that this is going to be dispatched. While if we are talking about one plant CSP, one plant PV, then true that each one is going to try to comply with its performance and with the guaranteed numbers, but it doesn't mean that it's going to be complementary, and it doesn't mean that there will be a complementary, completing each other within one plant. So when it goes to the grid, it goes as dispatch as required in the guaranteed generation. So I think it's very important to consider it.
It sounds like it has more to do with planning, and the TSO and the government really than anyone else. I mean, it's one of those things, right? As a developer, you would prefer, I assume, taking the whole thing, right? And managing it. Of
course, because if you have a hybrid project, again, it's a matter of tariff, right? So not only tariff, but also the way you are dispatching it. How are you going to dispatch it? Are you going to dispatch PV only when it's required and then someone else has to complement from the plant, whether there is availability, whether the plant is operational, with all the issues of power plant, or you are going to find a solution in order to always inject to the grid this amount of energy.
Do you foresee this fact being, so you see countries, providing that there is going to be more of these sort of hybrid approaches at the two levels, do you foresee countries taking more the route of let the developers deal with that, or do you foresee more going in the other direction where they're procuring it separately, if I could ask you?
So there are strategies that government has also. So there are some countries which have planned gigawatt or megawatt, it depends on the country, of CSP, of PV, of hybrid. And then there are some countries maybe where they allow the developer to innovate and then to find the best solution. So the purpose for maybe the off-taker is just, okay, I want this solution, provide me the best one at the best tariff, which, I mean, all the developers prefer, I guess.
Okay, I have a few more questions about the Dubai project. I don't know how involved, Javier, you are. I know Abengoa is also involved in that Dubai project, but, you know, feel free. One of them is how does the CSP PV tariffs, so like the DIWA 950 now, I keep on having to remind myself that it went from 700 in CSP to 950 with PV. How does the 950 tariff compares to coal power and natural gas in Dubai today? So you mentioned, you know, that it's cheaper, but by how much? How are we seeing those tariffs?
First thing is that Dubai has a strategy of having renewables. So it has to achieve its target by 2030 and 2050. And this target is for renewables. So there will be a portion which is the biggest portion is for solar between PV and CSP. So when it comes to comparing the tariff, as of today, we are looking for reaching a level of getting close and close. Every project should get closer and closer to the conventional project that DIWA has, which is most of Dubai is depending on Jebel Ali power plant. But we are trying here to get more competitive tariff, either in CSP or PV, to get the closest possible to this to what is now conventional project generating.
And do you know what the tariff is for that project?
Nowadays, no, I don't know what is the.
It sounds like it's an old project, right?
Yeah, it's old power plant. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. We have to find out that. Right. I have here a question that seems really interesting. Is the degradation of PV plants faster, slower than any of the CSP plants, or is it similar? This is in terms of the 35 years, you know, that you mentioned. Are you seeing, like, did you think that the life cycle or the lifetime of one of these plants is basically different or the same? Because, you know, electronics are different, I suppose.
Yeah, the components are completely different of CSP. I mean, we cannot compare really components of CSP plants to a PV plant, but what we have today is some guarantees of equipment. We have experience in equipment also for CSP. As I said before, there are many equipment in the power block which are similar to those in conventional project. There are some enhancement, as I said, for instance, in some equipment, where in structure, for example, there are some refurbishments to be done during the lifetime. So all this has to be considered in order to reach 35 years PPA. It's feasible, but it requires a bit more, calculation maybe in the structure, or improvement in some other redesign in some other equipment.
One other question that I can't find, that I think I might have dismissed it by mistake, said, and this is the last I'm going to ask for now, I'm going to go to Javier for a little while. He said, why did you not add essentially batteries to the project in Dubai? I mean, what was the reason why electrochemical batteries were left out?
So the tender initially was CSP tower project. And then, so we were allowed to have some alternative proposals. And then it became different technologies project where we have added also the PV portion. But given that we have already 15 hours of storage from the CSP, which is already built there, and the 15-hour storage were required either by the client or by also the load demand, the Dubai need in energy also at night. Then we did not have to go to add batteries, basically, because nowadays the batteries do not have many hours, and the purpose of the project was not to have a PV battery project, but it was CSP radar oriented with many hours of storage to get a 24-hour dispatch.
Many hours of storage. That's the answer, essentially. Yeah, too many for batteries to manage. Go
and also, yes, and also I think that the prices of the batteries are coming down now. But remember, this period is like 2 years ago, and 2 years ago the price of batteries were very high as well, and they're coming down now. But in terms of degradation and so on, as related to the other question, is something to check still. I mean, the suppliers are giving like more better prices and more competent prices for the batteries, but still there are some doubts on the degradation and how will be the reposition costs in few years. Like some suppliers are giving like 7 years of lifetime, other 10, and there are even suppliers that are giving like 15 years of lifetime. And you need to put that also in the equation and to take it in consideration. Okay.
Okay, one of the questions here, Javier, you actually typed an answer to someone asking about this, approach, either at the level where I procure 2 different projects, one for PV, one for CSP, or I put them together. And one of the things you see is that doing them together have lower prices due to synergies, but you didn't express what those synergies were. So this question is in regards to what do you mean by synergies and how much is that?
Okay, what I mean in synergies is also something that Marianne was saying in her presentation. It's about when you start a project, you have all the resources there focused for a project and all the management there and all the companies hired for the project to do the installations and to do all the earthworks and so on. So during construction, the bigger the project, the cheaper the cost. It's a rule that can apply always, or almost always, because you have a lot of things that are already there and you don't need to bring new people to do things or new companies and so on. So there are a lot of synergies during construction. And also we can have some common infrastructures, like the substation can be common for both of them, or the assembly factory for the structures of the PV plant and the collectors and so on. So those kind of synergies is what I mean. That in terms of construction and developing, but also in terms of management. If you are responsible of both plants, you can manage both plants and say, for example, what I was saying about batteries or how to divert the energy generated from the PV plant to the CSP in case that you need to get to export more energy in the night. You need to manage both systems by yourself. We have the example of South Africa where the last bids, the last rounds were focusing on generation in the evenings. They were focusing on that. Remember round 3, the tariff was like 2.7 times from 4:30 than in the morning. So you need to manage that. How to manage that is, for example, if you have the way to divert the energy from the PV plant to the CSP plant, and you know that the day is going to be a bit cloudy in the evening, you can operate the PV plant and charge the CSP plant because what the country needs and what you are going to get more paid is in the evening. Okay, so these kind of things what makes sense to build both projects together and manage both projects together.
Thank you. Also, in relationship to another question that you answered, that an inventor that has a pilot now at the Abu Dhabi Masdar Center said that he's come up with a CSP way to have the storage in the same place, and you said yes, this is the technology we're all looking for. So he replies, the technology says that stores heat in ceramic bowls and basalt bed rock at temperatures above 700. Heat is retrieved by heating air, HTF, and temperatures around 600 degrees. So it sounds good, right? But I suppose that the question is here, do you think this technology is needed, could do well?
Okay, for this kind of technology or other kind of storage, and what I was saying in my presentation, with the molten salts, we have the experience now for few years that is working. It's working fine. But we need maybe something cheaper and something easier. And this sounds, for example, cheaper and easier, but we need to prove it. It's good. What they are doing is they are testing in Masdar in Abu Dhabi. For that, they will have some data, but we also need like lifetime lifetime examples of lifetime. I don't get the word. Like yes, accelerated lifetime.
Stress tests.
Stress tests. Yes, that tests. Accelerating lifetime tests to check that this is working. And for sure, I mean, in this technology, we have been very brave with all the new developments, and for sure, this kind of developments in technology will come to some projects. The beginning in a small part of the project, but also later in a biggest with a biggest role in the project, let's say, and they will have room for that in the new projects for sure.
I was just thinking, you know, Rafael Suna is also here somewhere, and I was just thinking, I cannot even know how many different tests and pilots that you have in Abengoa of different storage medium, including, you know, heated air as a heat transfer fluid. This is nothing new. I mean, it's been done to death. Yet it all comes back to the molten salt. I mean, do you really expect any new technology to be better than molten salt after everything that you've done and you've seen, not only in Abengoa but also in the CMAT and other labs?
Not now, really. But I think that something simple will come, like stones, concrete, something like that, that will make everything a bit cheaper and easier to manage. And it will be, I think that it will go there. Unfortunately, we didn't finish everything here in Abengoa. We have a lot of things to do, and even we have a lot of projects to do in these kind of things. I think this technology is still quite young. Remember that conventional plants are the same, or with improvements in efficiency since 100 years ago. But we are not only improving efficiency, we are changing technology, changing materials, changing the way to do the things. And we are still growing. So I think the projections for those projections for prices and generation and so on are still very difficult to know, because it's not something that is going down little by little. It's something that is going down dramatically from one year to the other. So I think it's very difficult.
About 20 years time though.
Yeah, I think it's very difficult to know how it's going to be the future. Yeah. But for sure, for my opinion, for sure it will go towards easier things that maybe you can change. Yes, maybe the concrete doesn't work for forever, but maybe you can change it in 10 years and it's easy and cheap to do it. So
okay. 10 years, okay, I'll take that with me. A last question before we go is just about, you know, this life cycle here. Hang on. Oh, okay, no. Is the question that has been asked to me so many times, and also to different people, would have been make more sense to do the D950 project with only PV and storage? I mean batteries. Mariam, I'm sure that you're sick of hearing this question, but we need to ask it. Here, the question is like, okay, don't take batteries today, take batteries in 2 to 5 years. Does it make sense then? So I know that you guys have crunched the numbers and you have some very specific answers. So, you know, what is your thinking? Because this is 2 to 5 years, right? Do you think that in 2 to 5 years you could build that project at 950, pretty much 24 hours with batteries and PV?
For having 24 hours, I think it's going to be difficult in the next 2 to 5 years. But later, maybe, I don't know, maybe in 10 years or around that time, maybe there would be something which is generating 24 hours. I mean, we want to see always, we are going always for the most competitive option and of course the cheapest one. So for now, we have seen only the CSP, that is the one that is really competitive in terms of 24 hours. Even batteries, okay, the price of batteries is decreasing now, but it's still high. If we want to have more than 3 hours, 4 hours, then definitely right now CSP is making sense. In the future, maybe more, I think more than 2 to 5 years, then the batteries would reach, maybe that's the same level of CSP.
Maybe. We'll see, right, Mariam, from what I can hear here. Okay, Javier, what about you? What do you think? You've also crunched the numbers, I am sure.
Yes, I agree with Marianne. Actually, we both companies work together in these kind of things, and right now the batteries is an option, but it's still an expensive option and an option to be proved. So right now, I would say that no, yes, we cannot get 24 hours relying only on batteries. That is the main thing that CSP is able to do now. There are also some other things, not only electrochemical batteries. There is also hydrogen. Everyone is working in hydrogen as well as a storage medium and a storage technology. So we still, as I say, we still have a lot of room to grow in this storage area, which is the main thing that we need to focus. Everyone needs to focus on that. It's cheap to generate energy. Energy is not an expensive thing. The difficult is how to dispatch it when we really need it.
Thank you very much. Because actually, interestingly, we're covering hydrogen in a webinar next week. If you want to hear, you can not only hear from the IRENA in terms of market prospect, but also from the ThyssenKrupp, which is one of the companies that are working quite a lot on hydrogen. So I would recommend you join. Also, just to let you know, there is a Carnot battery. If you don't know what a Carnot battery is, a thermal battery. See, we do batteries in thermal energy as well. And Michael Geyer, which is someone that is very well known in the industry, is going to be talking about how Germany is planning to use old coal plants and change all of those coal plants into Carnot batteries to absorb all of the variable renewable that the energy system cannot take at the moment. Interesting, because from a social perspective in Germany, it's not okay to just tell all of the coal workers, bye-bye, you don't have a job. So this is actually part of the social work that Germany is doing to turn old school fossil fuel guys, people into renewable people. So I just wanted to mention that. And I also wanted to thank our sponsor for this particular event, which is SQM Molten Salts, which is the natural solution for thermal storage and heat transfer fluids for your CSP plant. This is like the bit that I have to say about that. But it's important to say that for very large scales at the moment, we don't have a better solution than molten salts at the moment, but this may change in the future, we will see. So I would like to thank very, very much Miriam and Javier for giving their time and teaching us all about this very interesting hybrid solution of PV and CSP. I do think it's the future. We need to start thinking about how to optimize the technologies and how they work. And as Miriam said very many times, so this needs to be a clear point, the tariff, the cost, it needs to be competitive. We need to keep going down the route where fossil fuels are no longer an option, but not because they're not an option, but because they are very expensive in comparison to renewables. And I hope that this is what we're all working on. Thank you very much, guys. And to everyone else, see you next time. Thank you.
See you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.